Good evening, Crime Crunchies. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I am your host, Courtney C., a 27-year veteran of the media, and I'm so happy to be able to bring you Crime Crunchies. Choo choo! Welcome aboard the Crunchy Express. Woo! All right. Well, we are talking tonight about what does law enforcement do if they don't have enough evidence. All right. In this day and age, the fine folks of the boys in blue, the FBI, the feds, they're not just working cases to find the culprit, which of course they are. They are also working under certain guidelines to ensure that if they do get the crook, that he is the right guy and that they're able to prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. And that means that they all have a certain amount of actual legal knowledge that they're working under, and they've got to make sure that certain things are buttoned up. And I would believe that as they get to a certain point in their investigation, they're probably working closely with the prosecutor, the DA, and all of those fine folks. Good evening, everybody. And you know what? I just want to say a special shout out before we get started to Crime After Dark HQ. This is the lovely Lisa. She is our mod, our one and only mod, and I appreciate her every night. Please be kind to her. And also check out her show, Crime After Dark HQ, on YouTube. Give her a sub. And also in the description, I have a link. So if you want to buy her coffee, that would be swell. Phew. Awesome. I also have some fun announcements. I just talked with my best friend, Boomer, at Boomer Investigates, and he's coming back on. Isn't that cool? Yay. All right. So let me share my screen. We're going to be working in my best friend Chad, ChatGPT, this evening. And while I'm sharing my screen, this is your chance. What? You're so lucky. If you subscribe, hey, it's free. And you then become part of the Cool Kids Club. If you're not subscribed, you're not the cool kid. You can't sit at the cool kid table. And you know you want to do that. So just subscribe. It'd be so awesome. All right. So here's ChatGPT. Again, I'm very transparent. I work a full-time job. I'm not going to do all this research. That's a lot of research. Look at all those words. I'm not typing all those words. You're crazy if you think I'm going to type all those words. You've got a screw loose. I'm not doing it. Okay, so this is what I am thinking. We went through the house. We looked at the house. We looked at the floodlights. Last night, we looked at the pacemaker. Okay. I'm pretty sure Nancy was in the house. Okay. I have to give a disclaimer. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm not alleging anything. I'm working through theories. All right. We don't have a suspect. Right now, statistics show that it's someone in her inner circle. And guess what that means? Her inner circle is most likely going to be in her house, in her car. She's going to be in their house, in their car. And that doesn't leave a lot of evidence. Unless you've got digital evidence, where do you go? So I went to ChatGPT and I said, all right, what happens when law enforcement does not have enough evidence to make an arrest, but they know who took Nancy? All right. If a family member in inner circle took Nancy, their DNA would be appropriate to be found in Nancy's home. All right. So yes, that is a very important distinction in a case like this. Investigators can have a strong working theory about who committed a crime while still lacking evidence strong enough to arrest, charge, and ultimately prosecute that person. Okay. This is a troublemaker, a rabble rouser. This is Crunchy Sissy, everybody. And you know what? Just ignore her. She's coming in here to cause, she's talking about flock cameras to me. And she's like, don't you know what flock cameras are? And I said, no, I don't know what flock cameras are. Of course I know what flock cameras are. And she starts yelling at me on the phone. Why don't you know what flock cameras are? All right. So anyway, that's my Crunchy Sissy. She knows. She's told me she was going to come in here and cause trouble. All right. She's distracting me. All right. Getting back to ChatGPT. All right. So investigators know, which Maureen O'Connell on the latest episode of Big City Dan that she's doing her podcast. She's like, it's very possible that law enforcement knows who did this, but it's going to be circumstantial. And J-Dub, Crunchy Sissy and I, we tease each other. She's weird and I'm weird, and we fake fight in public. It's really obnoxious. People look at us because we're weird. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Yes. She's a bad sissy. All right. So investigators, if they know, why can't they arrest? All right. So here is Chad's flow chart. Investigative suspicion to probable cause to charging to proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's where we get into trouble here. Police don't need enough evidence to convict before making an arrest, but they do need probable cause, meaning much more than a crunchy hunchy or mere suspicion. The DOJ describes probable cause as facts and circumstances that would lead a reasonable person to believe the person committed the offense. And like I said, we have DNA from an inner circle person who is perfectly fine. You know, we've got all this DNA that's been sent out to all these random DNA factories by nanos, and the hair, everyone's like, the hair. And then the hair comes back and he's like, it doesn't lead to our suspect. Well, guess what, nanos? Maybe the hair isn't who you think it is, but it could still be the real suspect. Who did the hair belong to then, if it's not the suspect? Was the hair, as per the great monks and his video, if the hair was in a specific location that made it a suspicious hair, okay, was the suspicious hair on the Apple Watch? I don't know. I'm just guessing. Okay. Was the hair on the Apple Watch? Because that would be pretty suspicious, right? If a hair was on the watch. Is there a hair on the bracket of the Nest camera? I don't know. I'm just guessing. Okay. Who is going to send in a hair if it's just a random hair? There had to be a reason for the hair to have been flagged and sent in. But if the sheriff says, oh no, in June, by the way, I heard in June that the hair is a nothing burger. Well, who does the hair belong to? And why was it suspicious? Okay. And is he ignoring the 2,000-pound gorilla in the room? Because, I don't know, because he wants to have a Netflix show. He wants to be the new Cops. And he thinks maybe if he's nice to Savannah, he'll get something. I don't think so. Okay, and prosecutors may be even more cautious. They can essentially say, we think we know who did this, but we aren't ready to put this case in front of a jury. And that's really the main point here. And they could end up holding off on arresting somebody until they really are buttoned up, especially the feds. The feds are going to, from what Maureen O'Connell says, the feds are going to have a case like 80% wrapped up, tied up with a bow, ready for trial. Ready for trial, where prosecution is likely to happen before they even make an arrest. They have it so buttoned up. Okay, your DNA point is especially important. Suppose, purely hypothetically, the perpetrator were a relative who routinely visited Nancy. Finding that person's ordinary DNA inside Nancy's house might prove almost nothing. A defense attorney, a la Alan Jackson, of course, he could say, of course, my client's DNA is in there. That's their mother or grandmother or relative. They've been inside the house many times. Duh. The FBI itself distinguishes crime scene DNA that can be attributed to a putative, that's a big word, putative perpetrator from DNA whose presence isn't necessarily associated with the crime. DNA testing can associate someone with an item or scene, but context determines what that association means. And when you've got 12 jurors, 12 of your peers, that leaves a lot of determination, subjective, maybe not objective, what that association stands for. All right, hypothetically, there's a huge evidentiary difference between someone's DNA being found on Nancy's sofa versus that person's blood being found mixed with Nancy's blood on an object apparently used during the abduction, which we don't believe happened, that supposedly that blood in the front is all hers, which again is very convenient. Likewise, DNA on a drinking glass may be completely innocent. DNA inside a newly purchased mask abandoned along an escape route could be far more incriminating. And of course, remember Glovegate. Who can ever forget Glovegate? All right, and this creates a particularly difficult problem with relatives. If a suspect legitimately had access to Nancy's house, investigators need evidence that connects the person to the crime. And that's why they need the DNA of Porch Guy, because Porch Guy most likely does not belong in Nancy's house. That's why if anything had gone anywhere with Luke Daly or Carlos or any of the other folks, that would be very important DNA because they have no business being in Nancy's house. Something interesting is happening with the DNA evidence in this case. Recent reporting indicates investigators have continued wrestling with forensic and digital evidence. That matters because it could explain why a case appears externally to be stuck, even if investigators have narrowed their focus considerably. Sheriff Chris Nanos, has previously emphasized the time required for laboratory DNA and digital testing. Yeah, but the way Chris Nanos assigns time, like last week, he said it could take 50 years. Okay, is it going to take 50 years for the DNA sample that is mixed with maybe 2 or 3 people? Like, what's up with that DNA? There's another possibility people sometimes overlook, and that's the one we're talking about ultimately tonight, is investigators may intentionally avoid arresting too early. Once someone is arrested and charged, the prosecution starts assuming obligations and deadlines. The defense begins obtaining evidence through discovery. Defense experts start attacking the forensic evidence, and prosecutors have committed themselves to a particular theory. If investigators believe additional evidence is obtainable, waiting can make sense. DNA that proves you were in Nancy's house isn't necessarily the same thing as DNA that proves you participated in Nancy's abduction. Bingo. So how could the family have arranged for Nancy to be, and I shouldn't say the family, the inner circle. Okay, I want to be kind. I know it doesn't sound like I'm being kind to the family, and I'm trying to be a little bit kinder because I do feel bad for them. This is a horrible situation. How could the inner circle have arranged for Nancy to be taken and not have any digital evidence? And the angle I'm coming at from this is we know that we've got a text from Derek Colella. All right. I'm wondering if the inner circle people were careful enough to not text and be that obvious, if they would have maybe arranged to meet in person somewhere. You know what I mean? Like maybe at Club Congress, or feed the information through a third person or something, because I still have to think that somehow Colella is involved in this. If you guys think Colella is involved, let me know in the chat. I do think somewhere along the lines that an inner circle person would have motivation to have someone else hire a porch guy so that they're 2 degrees separated from those conversations and it wouldn't be found on their devices. But keep in mind, law enforcement still has, what was my question? If we think Kalela is involved. Yeah, let me do a poll. I haven't done that in a while. Keep in mind that even if Kalela had a burner phone a la Rex Heuermann, they can still figure out burner phones because they can find phones that are in like the triangulation. And I'm not sure how they do that, but they did it with Rex Heuermann because of where the bodies were found. Somehow they were able to triangulate phones with cell towers and they found random numbers, but then they saw where the phones were all going back to I think it's Massapequa where Heuermann lived. So they are smart enough with the tools they have today to figure out when burner phones are associated with bad things. So let me poll. All right, I have to go into my chat to do a poll. Please hold while I do a poll. Let's see, I don't want to do a post. All right, let's see if I can do a poll. How do I do a poll? I did a poll the other day. Let's see. All right, start a poll. Okay, here comes the poll. Do you think Derek Kalela was involved with the hiring of porch guy? Yes, no, and I'll have a secret. Okay. Oh, I have too many letters. I'll do PG. Yes. Sorry, talk amongst yourselves. I obviously am not smart enough to do the poll. All right, what's going on here? I want to start the poll. I'm sorry, guys. Obviously, I can't even create a poll. Question mark. Yes, no. All right, I found out. All right, here comes the poll. Sorry, guys. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for waiting. Okay, here comes the poll. Okay. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, we got 100% on the yeses. Okay, well, let's let that stew for a little bit. Hello, everybody. Hello, Holly, Naomi. Okay. All right, so let's go back. So I'm just trying to figure out if there's any way that they could have snuck by any digital evidence if Kalela somehow hired porch guy. Okay. And yes, September 10th is sentencing. Thank you, Cindy Lou Girl, for DC. And do you think we'll learn anything? I have a feeling that if there was something to learn, they're not going to share it. Okay, so the question is, what would investigators expect to find digitally if this were an arranged abduction, and what would it mean if they didn't find it? An arranged abduction doesn't necessarily require much digital communication. Imagine hypothetically that person A knows a person who will physically remove Nancy. They don't necessarily need a trail of text saying, go to Nancy's house Saturday at 2 a.m. if they regularly interact for legitimate reasons. Investigators might see calls and messages without being able to establish what was discussed. But I have a feeling that they're not going to find that information on a insider's cell phone to Porch Guy. I think that there was going to be, again, 2 or 3 degrees of separation. And for all we know, DC could have had somebody else who knows somebody who hired Porch Guy. Hey, Annie, thank you for finding us from Thornbridge X Unfiltered. They are actually going live tonight at 7 and will be done. And I'm going to send everybody over to Thornbridge X. So thank you. I'm so glad you found us. Thanks so much, Annie. Glad you're here. Please subscribe. All right. Investigators could still reconstruct a surprisingly detailed pictures from things such as historical phone contacts between people, location information. And this is why it's good that they do have DC's phone, because that is another way they can triangulate. It's like, okay, who's DC talking to around that time? Because again, we're looking at, okay, she's just causing trouble right now. This person is causing trouble. Thanks for the jewels, bling bling. I'm going to leave that up there. Thank you very much, Naples Realtor Pilot. It's very, very generous of you. So if they're going to see who DC was texting around the 31st of Jan, around the 11th of Jan, and the 1st of Feb, and then even like the days before, the days after. So historical phone contacts, location information, vehicle or license plate camera records. Those are those flock cameras on the roads. Unfortunately, Nancy's neighborhood does not have flock cameras, hence part of the problem. Okay. Neighborhood or commercial surveillance. And yes, they would have to go out to a main drag. But here's the thing. It is like a spaghetti bowl. Her neighborhood is like a spaghetti bowl. And they would have to map out, 3 or 4 ways of getting around and going out, and then those main drags. So they do have, like Nano says, hundreds of thousands of hours of video and thousands of cars on video to research at 3 in the morning. Okay, again, Nano math does not math. 50 years to solve this. And think about all the people that have arrested. Remember when he said there's so many people who have been arrested. Thanks for the happy poop. Thanks for the jewels, bling bling. I love happy poop. Happy poop makes me giggle. Cloud backups and deleted data, smart home devices, watches, and other connected devices. And again, we know that all of these things were downloaded from the Inner Sanctum Circle by ICACs on February 4th. At the exact moment, think of the odds. They're holding these people's phone when the DC text comes in. What? Talk about bad, fuzzy math. Nano's math. So here's the scenario I find more interesting. Suppose investigators discovered something like this. Person A normally uses their phone constantly. January 28th, normal activity. January 29th, normal. January 30th, normal. January 31st, suddenly almost nothing for several hours surrounding the crime. February 1st, normal activity resumes. This is exactly how they got Kohberger, because Kohberger turned his phone off. Strangely, during the time that the Idaho 4 murders were being committed, And then miraculously, his phone was turned back on later. Isn't that weird? So, the people at Cellbrite, they see these things, and almost having a phone off, airplane mode on, sometimes that speaks louder than just leaving it on and having the GPS follow you. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as having your phone follow you along and they watch you at the scene. So, and a family member presents another complication. This parallels the DNA problem you raised. If Nancy routinely communicated with a relative, then investigators discovering 27 calls between Nancy and relative X doesn't mean much by itself. Likewise, relative X phone was at Nancy's house 3 days earlier, could be perfectly innocent. But again, I think that whoever did this is smart enough to have probably not brought the phone. And this is the question. This is the question that would be very, very helpful, wouldn't it? If we could have seen her come home and who she was with, what car, etc. Because as far as we know, that doesn't exist, right? And unfortunately, her Nest camera, you would have had to have driven through which they might have done. I mean, if you do the circle drive, you could drive in, swoop around. She would have gone into the garage, and then you could just kind of back out a little bit and then go around the circle. The Nest cam would have caught the car driving past, but do they have that? I don't know. That would be nice. Again, this is the frustration on my side, on my part. There's so much more that should have been released. They have been holding this way too close to their chests. They're holding it way too close. They needed to have, they need to share more. If they really want to catch this guy, it's like, help me, help you. Help me, help you. Okay? Love that question. All right, scrolling down. Some of these things are pretty obvious. I don't want to read through all of this because it gets a little redundant. Okay, so theoretically, if the family member or insider used Derek Colella or DC to hire Porch Guy, would they have had to have had these conversations in person? Lori Smith. Okay, Naples realtor. Crunchy Sissy. People have FOIA'd the heck out of this whole thing. This is why we know you're not following the case. You should be shamed, Naples realtor pilot. Shamed. We know. It's like, how do you know I'm not following the case without me saying I'm not following the case? Shame. Shame, Naples realtor pilot. You know why? No FOIA is going to do anything. Okay? Yeah, you're busted. You're busted big time. Okay? Exactly. Everyone in this, see, Mystery Diva is saying shame. Shame. Everyone shame Naples realtor pilot. This is Crunchy Sissy. How bad girl. Exactly. Everybody shame her. It's like, again, how do you just advertise you're not following the story? Hey, Jody Woo. Okay. I know I'm being nice to her because I appreciate it. They're not going to FOIA anything, Crunchy Sissy, because they're going to this is going to be like JFK, where these files will not be released for like 50 years after all the lizard people are dead. they're not going to release this until all the lizard people are dead. Okay, so they would not necessarily have had to communicate in person, but if you're building a hypothetical in which a family member used Derek Colella as an intermediary to reach Porch Guy, the communication trail becomes one of the biggest problems, okay? There is also an important factual hurdle. The FBI has publicly characterized Colella as an imposter. Oh, that's convenient. And the available court record has not connected him to Nancy's actual abduction. And why is that? Isn't that convenient? They labeled him an imposter, and basically he got a slap on the wrist for digital harassment. Suppose the hypothetical chain were family member to Colella to Porch Guy. And I think hypothetically it would be family member Colella, person X, and then Porch Guy. I think that there's Colella, person X, and then Porch Guy. I think that they have tried to remove themselves as far as possible. Those relationships could theoretically involve face-to-face conversations, ordinary telephone conversations, electronic communications, or some combination. Importantly, though, investigators wouldn't necessarily need to recover an incriminating message saying kidnap Nancy. Of course not. They're not going to do that. I think that there's enough intelligence here that, I mean, in the beginning, I laugh because it's like, this is a sophisticated job. This is so sophisticated. No, I think that it's not sophisticated. I think that they were just smart enough to avoid digital footprints with a cell phone and a digital footprint with a car that had a brain. They could have used one of the car lots, aka OG Joe, with cars, gotten an old car, a beater, and left the cell phones at home. Hey, Jen, Thornbridge X Unfiltered, howdy doody, buckarooty. We're sending everyone on over your way. And I've got Boomer coming on in a week, and I'm excited about that. I love collaborating with people. I love it. Colella's digital footprint actually demonstrates how difficult hiding communications can be. According to the federal complaint, which has been doctored and prettied up, Colella used a VoIP service, dum-da-dum-dum. He used a Google number that was free, that was associated with his Derek Colella at gmail.com. How dumb can you be? I would say that's pretty dumb. I said, howdy doody, buck-a-rooty. That is how I do it. Okay, so Colella used a VoIP service with Derek Colella at gmail.com. That sounds relatively anonymous. It wasn't. No, Chad, it was not anonymous. It was the dumbest thing. It was so they'd done everything so well. If he's involved, they had done everything so well. And then Derek Colella decides to make a text to A's phone and T's phone with a VoIP number that's from Google that's associated with Derek Colella at gmail.com, and then use that same VoIP number to call the third person's cell phone for 9 seconds. Everything had gone so great, allegedly, okay? And ICAX was probably holding the phone. Everybody is just like face palm. Everyone is like, oh man, we were good. Face-to-face communication would eliminate one type of evidence, but not necessarily the trail. Again, I believe that if it's a insider, they would have worked with Kalila that they have, acquaintance with. Kalila would have used person X, and person X could have gotten Porch Guy. I don't know that Kalila would have gone directly to Porch Guy. It seems like they would have done a little bit better planning than that. Let me check the poll. Let me end the poll. Oh, we do have a few people that believe the lizard people hired Porch Guy, and you guys did not disappoint. All right, I'm ending the poll. As of right now, 73% do believe that DC was involved with the hiring of Porch Guy. 21% said no, but there are some people just like me who know the lizard people are involved, and that is the important thing here. All right. So, I do think that they were probably planning this for a wee tad. And again, we've talked about all kinds of theories, the means, the motive, the opportunity. We've been there. There's a major weakness in the Kalila as middleman theory. Kalila told investigators that he had been following the case through media coverage and obtained family information online. More importantly, authorities said there was no evidence connecting his communications to Nancy's actual abduction. Well, you know what? I believe that if Derek Kalila told them that he was just curious if the family would respond, then I think that's the truth. Oh, of course that's the truth. And I know that if authorities said that there's no evidence connecting his communications to Nancy's actual abduction, I know that that's the truth as well. These guys, gosh golly, they're so silly. They're just silly willies. If Kalila were truly the intermediary, investigators should be intensely interested in his communications and associations before Nancy disappeared. They probably would also be interested in using him as a confidential informant. We haven't talked about confidential informants. The poll should include an I don't know. You're right. And you're right. I should have added an I don't know. I was too busy trying to get lizard people hiring Porch Guy in under 35 characters. And so that's why I screwed that up. And it was taking me a long time. So I felt a lot of pressure. But you're right. I should have. And I bet that would have changed our numbers for sure. Okay. And I'm sorry. I was, again, like I said, I was trying to figure out how to do lizard people and 35 characters. And that was a main focus, was lizard people. Okay. But your larger theory raises a very good investigative question. Forget Kalila's name for a moment. If investigators believe someone close to Nancy recruited Porch Guy, then the central problem would be, how did the person who wanted Nancy taken connect with the person who actually entered the property? That's what we need to know. All right, moving on. All right, so this is where I do think Alan Jackson, I want to do another poll. Who here has heard of Alan Jackson? And who here thinks that if there was somebody arrested, that Alan Jackson would miraculously show up as the defense attorney du jour? Because I'm convinced Alan Jackson is the man for or Garagos. Is he still doing law? I know he's doing a lot of TV because he's up there. He was the OJ dude. I'm all about Action Jackson. Yes, he is my favorite attorney as well. But I almost want to put a bet. I don't gamble, but I would do a bet in Vegas on this case that if once they make an arrest, that Alan Jackson gets this case because it's too juicy. It's really gonna it's got a lot of meat for Alan Jackson on the defense. We all know it because Nanos is a doofus. I know, I'm sorry. A lot of people miss the lizard people. I'll do another poll next time and we'll include lizard people. I'm sorry. I'm just glad that there are other people that believe in lizard people. It's a very important thing for me. Lizard people are the aliens that have taken over, and they disguise themselves as regular humans. And, you know, so here we go. We're talking about Alan Jackson. So my question was, if someone was arrested and with circumstantial evidence and went to trial, how could a defense attorney like Alan Jackson attack the prosecutor's case? Okay. So a lawyer with Alan Jackson's style could potentially be very dangerous, built primarily on circumstantial evidence. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the attorney general, I bet you anything, and after this is all said and done, I would love to know that the attorney general has sat down and said, look, if we got someone like Alan Jackson to take this up, this is what he would do, this is what he would do, and this is what he would do. So if you, prosecutors and or law enforcement, can shore those things up, then you've got a case. But until you shore this up and Jackson can tear this apart, we're not doing nothing. Lizard people, or reptilians, are part of a conspiracy theory claiming that reptile-like beings disguise themselves as humans and secretly control governments, banks, or celebrities. Exactly. And I do remember V. I am that old. You know what? I'm proud of my age. I'm 57. I am a child of the 80s. 57 years old, and I kick and I stretch. And I'm 50. Kick. All right. So, yeah. So let's find out how Alan Jackson, Action Jackson, where is the connection? So if Nancy hypothetical we've been discussing, here's how I think an aggressive defense could attack it. Number one, where is the connection to Porch Guy? How is my client connected to Porch Guy? Family member, intermediary, Porch Guy, Nancy. Jackson could methodically remove the arrows. So show me the call. Where's the text? Show me the payment. Show me the meeting. Show me the witness who heard the agreement. Show me the evidence my client ever knew Porch Guy. Where's the payment? Guess what? There was no payment. How do we know there was no payment? Because on February 4th, when DC texted A&T saying, yo, dude, where's the Bitcoin? We're waiting for it. And ICAX is holding the phone. And in the other room, Savannah's scream, ugly crying because they've just told her she can't pay the ransom. They ain't got no money to pay the Bitcoin. So they never paid him. They never paid him. So if A&T are in Italy on an extended holiday, they never paid for shit. Sorry, I try not to cuss because I know I have an older audience. Thanks for the jewels. Bling, bling. Chickle says, happy birthday, Jody. Oh, Jody, happy birthday. Happy birthday. Aw, 69 on Sunday. Very cool. We just get better with time. I have no problem talking about my age. I have lived a lifetime, and I love being an 80s baby. A baby. A baby from the 80s. 1987, graduation year. A baby. So, they never paid, guys. They never paid for the crime, French fries. Au contraire, mon cher. Show me the payment. Well, I can show you for the payment request from DC. Where's the agreement? I love boomers. Boomers and Gen Xers. We know. We were feral. We were feral animals growing up. He could turn innocent family DNA into a prosecution problem, into a prosecution nightmare. Your earlier observation becomes extremely importante. Imagine prosecutors have a family member's DNA in Nancy's bedroom, kitchen, vehicle, or elsewhere in her home. Defense, well, that's her family. Of course, they're caretakers. She hugged Nancy. She touched the door. She sat on the furniture. She took a dump in the bathroom. Okay, now that was for Crunchy Sissy. Attack the investigation rather than prove an alternative killer. This is critical. The defense doesn't have to solve Nancy's disappearance. It doesn't have to identify porch guy. It doesn't have to explain anything. They just have to do probable cause. They don't have to prove anything. Jackson could repeatedly turn to, well, my client, they don't know. Who's porch guy? They don't know. Where did Nancy go? They don't know. What vehicle? They don't know. Who wrote the ransom communication? They don't know. Put law enforcement on trial. This is what everybody's been waiting for. Yeah. Get that Nanos with his fuzzy math. Get him good. Get him. This resembles one of the strategies Jackson's team employed in the Karen Reed case. Oh, yes, he did. That was the whole case from the defense. Reed's defense aggressively challenged the integrity of the investigation, including investigative errors. Anyone hear about the leaf blower used in the snow? Looking for shards of glass or the broken taillight? Anyone remember the red Solo cups that was used to gather blood evidence from the snow, and the Stop and Shop paper bag that somebody pulled out of their trunk? Literally a leaf blower. They used a leaf blower in Karen Reed's case on snow. The conduct of lead investigator Michael Proctor, and he lost his job. Witness inconsistencies and the handling/interpretation of physical evidence. Karen Reed was ultimately acquitted of the homicide charges at her second trial. And you know what? We ultimately don't know if Karen Reed really did hit John O'Keefe with her car. I don't think she did. Personally, Jennifer Coffindaffer is convinced she did hit him with her car. There's just no way she hit him with her car. But guess what? Just the investigation alone was enough that Reed should not have been acquitted. It was horrible. In a hypothetical Nancy prosecution, you'd expect questions such as, why wasn't this person interviewed immediately? Why wasn't the family taken into different rooms and separated? The reporting parties. There was never, I don't think that there was ever an investigation into the reporting parties. You can't tell me there was. They were treated. Nanos, day 2 or 3, gets on the podium and says, I need to make sure I cover all the notes that the family gave me. I'm actually aiding and abetting and assisting the suspects in presenting a narrative. That's what Nanos did. If you really want to know, Nanos helped perpetuate the narrative that the prime suspect wanted to present. Yeah. Why wasn't this person interviewed immediately? Why weren't they separated? Why weren't they separated? The entire family is in Annie's house for a week, week and a half until they flee in the middle of the night under darkness to $1 million property down the road in a gated community. We fled under threat of terror. We fled, holding hands, running into a Cadillac Escalade, black vehicle with a driver. We fled into a gated community. It had to have a pool because I wasn't going to just not have a pool. I couldn't go anywhere. I had to have a pool and a hot tub. We had to have food delivered. Oh, it was awful. It was awful. They fled. Who contaminated the scene? Everyone contaminated the scene. Everyone. They drove over the driveway. They drove over the circular driveway. They released the scene after 1 day. Cutie patootie Brian Enton filmed walking up to the blood. The blood. The blood. The blood. The blood. Everybody was there. Was every person documented? No. No, everyone's hanging out, all the families together. Everyone's hearing everything that the feds are talking to Savannah about. The feds telling them what they could do, what they shouldn't do. The prime suspect is literally in the house listening to feds advising the family. Thumbs up. Attack every inconsistency. This could be especially significant if public statements by investigators differed over time. A good cross-examiner doesn't necessarily need to prove that a witness lied. He can demonstrate statement 1 does not equal statement 2, does not equal statement 3. Then ask, which version should this jury believe? He would chew, he would bite, he would crunch, he would chew and destroy this case. Alan Jackson would. Separate suspicious behavior from criminal behavior. Lying isn't kidnapping. Did the family member need money? Financial problems aren't kidnapping. We hear this one all the time. Look, he's a dick. He cheats on his wife. He's a pig. Doesn't mean he killed his wife. No, like Scott Peterson. Yeah, he's a jerk. He's a dick. He's a liar. He's a cheater. He's a scumbag. He has the personality of a damp, moldy dish rag that has not been cleaned, and it stinks. But a bad personality and a boring person does not make a murderer. And that's just the truth. Families argue. Family member's phone went dark. Well, a powered off phone doesn't prove conspiracy. There's just plenty of ways. Yes, I shall continue with the lizard people. Attack the prosecution's timeline second by second. This is where digital evidence could become either devastating to the defense or devastating to prosecutors. Phone location, doorbell activity, security cameras, vehicle telemetry. That's a new word, telemetry. Pacemaker information. Oh, we learned all about pacemakers last night, didn't we? Smart home records, or the lack thereof, calls, text, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, lizard people. Help me. Help me, lizard people. Timeline doesn't work. Their cars, everything shows they were home. They were home. The defense could exploit the lack of Nancy's beautiful body. A no-body prosecution can absolutely succeed. Yes, they can. They can. The prosecution can win if there's no body, but if Nancy hasn't been recovered, the defense has additional questions available. Where is she? Where did she die? When did she die? How did she die? What weapon? We don't know. We have no idea. What vehicle? Don't know. Suspicion. Yeah, they might look it, but give me the real evidence. You have evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. All right, so there's that. And then, because we have to get going, because my time is almost up. What are the laws for the United States to extradite from Italy? Just saying. I'm just looking into this. I don't know. I'm not accusing. I'm curious. The United States and Italy do have an extradition treaty, and it absolutely can be used to return someone from Italy to the US for prosecution. The current framework originates with the US-Italy extradition. And yes, J-Dub, you know where I'm going. You know it. You're taking my thunder away, J-Dub. It's okay. I'm just teasing you. All right. So, and this is the thing. This is what J-Dub is kind of saying. She's already heard this, seen this, and it's, you know, again, this is, we probably, no, you're fine. I'm just teasing you. And I wanted to look into this because I have not heard about this yet. But apparently you can't just call up Italy and say, yo, arrivederci, ciao, bella, and say, look, I got a problem with this person. They're over there on extended holiday. Can you put them on the plane? Yeah, I'll put them on the plane. But no, it doesn't work that way. You have to give them enough proof that they literally will take the complaint, and they have to run it through their own, I don't know what their attorney general, their lawyer king, the king of law in Italy. Yes, they have to run it through the Italian king of law if they're in Italy. Then the Italian king of law has to decide if there's enough evidence. Again, we need to have the evidence. And then the king of Italian judicial review needs to look at, all right, well, what kind of punishment are we talking about? Because you have to have at least a year or more type penalty. This definitely would fit the bill, but the king of Italian law is then going to look and see if the state that's trying to get them back has the death penalty. And Arizona does have a death penalty. I'm going to skip forward. So part of this problem is, does this mean, and I'm certainly not going to get into whether or not the death penalty is appropriate for any person, okay? Thanks, Lisa. Look, everybody's theory is as good as the next person's theory. No one knows anything right now. Woohoo! But yes, they're going to, if anything, before they return somebody from Italy, they probably have to ensure that the death penalty is taken off of the table. And I mean, that's fine. So ultimately, yes, they can get somebody back from Italy, but they have, again, it's coming down to the proof. And it's going to come back to, do they have enough? And honestly, until they have enough, they're probably not going to do anything, even if they have this figured out. All right. Everybody needs to be nice to Lisa. She's my mod, and everybody needs to be nice to Lisa. I don't mess around with Lisa. I will kung fu chop for Lisa. All right. So guess what? We're about done with this. I got through the things I wanted to talk about, and I was really, I apologize because I was really goofy tonight. And I probably sound like I have a screw loose. I don't care, because you guys have been warned that I'm weird, and that's just how it is. I'm assuming you're weird, or you like weird, because you're still here. So thank you so much. I would love it if everybody could go over to Thornbridge X Unfiltered on YouTube. They have a fabulous interview tonight. I believe it is with Juanita Adame. I hope I said that right. No disrespect if I did not. I'm horrible with names. They're getting ready. They're going to go live at 7. And then I will be back whenever. I'm scheduling Boomer Investigates to come back because I want to pick his law enforcement homicide brain. Thank you, Naples Realtor Pilot, aka Crunchy Sissy, if you're still there. Thank you for hanging out, Sissy. Whatever. She's older than me, and she used to hold me down and spit in my face. Okay, so I don't know if anyone here has an older sibling that used to beat them up, but my sister, she held me down and spit in my face. And we still talk. She's my only sibling. And we took care of our mother. We ran mom back and forth. All right, everybody, have a great night. Thank you again. If you didn't subscribe and you would like lies, it is not Naples Realtor. You held me down and spit in my face. Yes, you did. You beat me up all the time. Please go see Thornbridge X Unfiltered. Please make sure you subscribe, like, hit the bell, because I go live. I don't really have a schedule. It's just whenever I feel like I've got enough to talk about. I'm a lone wolf. I'm free as the wind. I cannot have constraints put on my creativity. Have a good evening, you guys. I love all of my crunchies. I will catch you on the flip side. And toodaloo. Toodaloo. Bye-bye, lizard people.